Welcome to Watches Tonight. This is the 1916 Company, and I'm your host, Tim Mosso. Garrett's on the switcher this evening, and it is good to be back, guys. I was out for my birthday last week, and what was supposed to be a Monday off turned into a Monday interview with the CEO of Grubel Forsey, so I came back a bit early from vacation. I'm getting that day back from this company, you better believe that. But for now, I'm happy to be back online with you, making up for lost time. We got Rich Mitch, Enrique Cassiano, Edward Ledden of Sweden, Arto Charles, we got Michael everywhere, but specifically from Manhattan, Aristocratic from Asheville, North Carolina, Mateo C, AD Never Calling, Birbinghard from Seattle, we got David Remus from Arlington, Virginia, Junior Johnson from Michigan, and Jim Millett from the UK, 911 Euro, Rin, Rick on Watches, welcome to one and all. It's good to see you guys in the box. Thank you for wishing me a happy birthday, I appreciate that belatedly, and Dan CT from London, staying up late with us. We got Mark S from Brooklyn, Sandeep G from Sarasota, where my uncle used to live. We got Gear and Train, Oliver Glover in SoCal. We got Rohit from the Netherlands. We got JP and Scott I from Marion, Pennsylvania. Local boy Andrew Schild, Rodrigo, Simon, Celine Driver. Welcome, guys. Okay, so this evening, GMT versus chronograph for your first watch money. A way to get started in watches if you're buying your first piece and you have an ambition to own a complication. We're also chatting live, and I'm sharing your viewer wrist shots right here tonight on Watches Tonight. Well, we're warming up. Do me a favor. You might know I'm an Instagrammer, but not only am I an Instagrammer, so is Squash. So you can take a look at Squash Watches and insight into the life of Tim Mosso. I try to make it 9 parts watches, 1 part me. So you'll occasionally see cars, bikes, squash, and guitars. And that is Tim_Mosso on Instagram. Jumping in, wrist shots number 1, some heavy hitters to start out. Rick R of Chicago gets us started with his Moritz Grossman GMT, one of the most underrated brands in the business. Jeff S rolls in his Bentley, a very South Florida Bentley right there with the Laurent Ferrier Grand Sport Tourbillon. Laurent Ferrier, a race car driver, would approve. Eric O and his Rolex GMT-Master II. Report from Mannlichen in Switzerland. He's making a tour of the country, and that is a great place to start. We got Danny K, also in Switzerland, with his Rolex on the river, I think in Lucerne, looking good. Blue watch on a blue river. We got Edward P, who's looking out for number 1 with his Royal Oak Jumbo from Audemars Piguet. He's got the 16202 ST. Guys, send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com, or if you like vintage, at thewatchbox.com. The redirect will work. Welcome to the box, Kurt Angle. Welcome, Why Not Adrian. Welcome, Ronald from Bristol, UK, and Neil B. Fastest time to get here. I'm glad to see you guys. Guys, this is going to be a little bit of a more intense show because I've overloaded it with facts and features and watches. I found the longer shows actually do pretty well, so we're not going to be gun shy about 40 minutes. I'm going to make sure you get your money's worth tonight. Lawrence F. V&M, welcome to one and to all. Happy to see Time Hill from Virginia. And we got W, greetings from Tehran. How are you doing over there? Hope well. All right, so let's get started with chronographs versus GMT. Complications often are an aspirational factor in the journey of a watch collector. Most people start with some kind of time-only 3-hand watch, or they start with a time and date watch. So here's the thing. A lot of folks also relish the thought of owning something with an extra function, a complication, at some point in the future. But for others, entering the collector scene with a complication is the actual plan. But certain types are too costly to maintain, too expensive to buy, too rare or esoteric to be a first and only watch. This is the theme of today's discussion, the most democratic and accessible complications in their most accessible forms. So it's rare for anyone to get into complications with a tourbillon, a minute repeater, a perpetual calendar, or something offbeat like a title display. Some of those are too expensive, others are just, I don't know, too delicate, and often they're both at the same time. Celestials, equation of time, and non-Gregorian calendars, do you really have to ask, guys? Almost nobody starts with those. But hey, if you want to go big, go big. Tonight, we're playing to the majority that will probably be buying their first complication, and here's a blueprint for success. Let's jump into the box, see what's going on in this box right here. We got Mike B from Helena, Montana. Montana, the homeland of the controversial out-of-state car registration. And we got Mark S. Tim, why does Lange have chrono subdials below the cannon pinion? Is there a functional advantage to that? Probably not, but if you look at the current in-house Rolex Daytona, you'll also note that the registers are not in line with the cannon pinion, and that's just a function of the way the movement's made under the dial. Okay, Randy S. Poll, if you could only have one Chrono or GMT. Guys, let us know as this rolls along and I'll read your reactions. So we're going to start with the Tudor Black Bay 58 GMT. Now there was the first Black Bay GMT, a Pepsi no less, that came out in 2018. Remarkable because that was the same year Rolex brought back its Pepsi GMT. And I'm going to say, well, that's a great watch. It's a little bit chunky. The most versatile Tudor GMT is the much more recent Black Bay 58 GMT. So envision it on a bracelet, envision it on a strap, but it's going to be 39 rather than 41. And because it has a unique movement, it's not just smaller, it's also thinner, with no degradation of technical spec compared to the full size. 39 rather than 41, it is slimmer and it's more appealing in a lot of ways because I would call this a unisex watch, but also more my style. As a person who likes a more traditionally sized watch when the style is vintage, and this is a neo-vintage watch. This is based on the subs of the 1950s and the early 60s. So 41 feels a little bit oversized. This feels like the sweet spot. You're getting the 5450U movement, which among other things is built tough, anti-magnetic. It is both a COSC spec movement, but also master chronometer certified, which means it goes beyond that. Fully cased up testing, durability, power reserve, winding efficiency, anti-magnetism to the same standard as a master chronometer Omega. You're getting that right here. And again, a double time watch that has that bezel allowing you to calculate a third time zone. Functionally, there is no difference between this and its big brother from the other brand. This model is a really great value at $4,900. That's on the bracelet, which is how I always advise you buy a watch, because getting a bracelet as an after-sales accessory generally is more expensive than buying it with the watch. I'd rather you get it with the bracelet and then buy the strap as an accessory than do the opposite. But if you insist, you will save a little bit of money. It's $4,675 if you get it on the rubber strap. And it does look quite good on the strap, I'm not gonna lie. I like the feel of a strap. I'd probably buy it on the bracelet, put the bracelet in the box, wear it on the strap unless I changed my mind. Remember, while there is a T-fit clasp on here, a strap is infinitely adjustable. All right, jumping into the box, let's see what you guys are saying. Bum, 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 bum. Got quite a few in the box. We've got Vincent joining in from Florida. We got Scott I saying jump hours are great, complications and useful. And we got Jim M saying weekly shout out to join us on the Talking Time with Tim Mosso Facebook group. I second that. We got Norm M in the box with Randy S. We got Mark T 5493. And we got Zach S and A.B. saying, I wish Tudor would lose the riveted plates on the bracelet. That's true. If we're going to do like a vintage Rolex Tudor style bracelet, it's time to introduce like a folded link design. I think the rivet bracelets have run their course. Okay, if you want to stay in the Tudor world, but you want to go with the chronograph, check out the Tudor Black Bay chronograph. Now, we've had this around since 2017, so it's not a new arrival, although the Panda styles are a bit more recent, and in my opinion, the way to go. At 41 millimeters in steel, it's fairly beefy, but the solidity and the weight only confirm how far Tudor watchmaking has come in the last 15 years. Once tangibly a quality step behind big brother Rolex, Tudor now passes the eyes closed in the hand test of product integrity. They're just solid, substantial, and they give you the impression of something that costs more than it does. So a basic Panda or inverse Panda Black Bay chronograph will run you $6,050 with the 5-link Jubilee bracelet, or $5,950 if you go with that 3-link simulated rivet style. So if you don't like the rivet style, you've now got the 5-link look, which they're not calling Jubilee, but it so is Jubilee. I also think it gives the watch a little bit of a different look, and I do think it vents the wrist better on a hot day. So for almost every imaginable reason, this is the direction I would go. And I would get the inverse panda, the black with the silver registers, and the 5-link. That would be my spec. Now, we understand that this chronograph is a bit of a throwback to the customer caliber era of Tudor watchmaking, and I'm actually fine with that because they picked one of the best in the business. The MT5813 is the Breitling B01. It's got some upgrades. It's free-sprung, for example. It uses Tudor's silicon hairspring for anti-magnetism. And if you look closely at the minutes register, the Breitling version is 30 minutes, the Tudor version is 45, and I always find a longer minutes register or a bigger scope to the minutes register is helpful. Also, keep in mind that the Breitling B01 is one of the best chronos going. Chronometer-certified, column wheel, vertical clutch. I'll actually tell you, 3-day power reserve, hacking, quick set, but what really sets it apart for me is that alongside stuff like the Rolex 4131 or the Zenith El Primero 4000, the column wheel feel of a B01 or the Tudor MT equivalent is really among the sharpest and most impressive in the business. But if you have the patience and a bit of luck, the recent Black Bay Flamingo Blue is the way to go. Now, I liked the Tudor Chrono Pink, but I like this a whole lot more. Some highly credible dealers that do volume are being told they're only going to get 2, 3, 4 of these for the model year. And like the pink, production is going to be short and sweet. So this is going to be a watch that's affordable in the sense that you could buy it for relatively little money, but exclusive in the sense that there will not be many of them. So take everything we just said and add a very cool dial. You can see it is Miami inspired, and I love that because that is where Watch You Want, the Nucleus company for 1916, actually started out. We were down in South Florida, and my heart's still there. And it was $5,875 in January. There was an across-the-board Tudor price hike. Now it sells for still reasonable $6,050, and fine, take my money. I just don't think they will because these are damn hard to find. This uber-scarce variant is worth the legwork if you like the color. I have heard stories confirmed of people just walking into a Tudor dealer, asking last year about the Tudor Chrono Pink, telling a story about having a birthday that day, or a brother who really loves the watch, or a passion for the Tudor brand, some sort of story that connected with the dealer and the dealer let them have the watch. So even though this thing is going to be exclusive, don't give up. I've seen it happen. All right, jumping in the box, we got Randy S. Chrono brings style at the expense of water ingress. Still got to go with Chrono. I don't think you're going to suffer with the Black Bay Chrono. 200 meters and screw downs should keep you set. Mason 1 is in the box. Talking about the Heritage Pilot's Watch, a retro aviation-inspired watch with a Fume dial. Well, okay, technically their Heritage Center Second has long been billed as a field watch, not specifically pilots, but they may have changed their thinking or their marketing there. What else is going on? WC saying definitely the GMT is the best daily for me. We got Zach S joining from Sarasota, Florida, and we are joining in. Hi, we are, good to see you there. We got Miroslav joining in from Europe, staying up late, saying I'm pretty bad with the complications, just a few chronographs, not a single GMT, and not to mention nothing more complicated. A question, what about the Journe Elegant? Well, as a first watch, it's not really part of tonight's theme. A, it's really expensive. B, it's hard to get even if you've got the money. And C, I wouldn't really describe it as complicated. It has refinements, but not complications. And then we got Thomas Burnett in the box with Celine Driver commenting, I love my Zellos, and Jeff S joining in just now. Herb Antelope, welcome to both of you. Now, wrist shots number 2. Michael C. sends us a his and hers shot of solid gold Breguet, resplendent with full bracelets, and I love those bracelets. Nathaniel K. of South Florida, longtime friend, admires his Louis Lee Chopard Lunar 1 Big Date, down where it's warm, or I guess down where it's super hot because now it's 100 degrees in Philadelphia. Kudzu Man watches Mercedes-Benz F1. It's a watch party in 2 senses with his IWC Portuguese 7-day. Abdul R of Germany showcases the 40mm titanium Christopher Ward 12 that Chris Ward kindly sent him for a trial on the wrist. No commitment necessary. Chris Ward, they take care of you. Amanda S. in Teddy Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota with Cartier and Bison. Bison, I'm suspecting they taste better than they smell. Great shot, Amanda. Thank you. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com. See your pieces on these pixels. V&M saying he's in Boston. We got Ira Wolf joining in, also from Boston. And we've got Totut saying, should I overpay for Rolex or market will be back possibly to buy at retail? It depends on the model and it depends on what you consider soon. Like if soon is the next recession or economic downturn, then sure. But I still think that even in an economic downturn, you're not getting a discount on a Rolex, you're paying list. As far as getting a used watch discount versus retail, some used Rolex watches do sell for less pre-owned, but you're gonna look at oddballs, like for example, a solid white gold Yachtmaster II. It's definitely not gonna be steel Daytonas, and it's probably not gonna be any Daytona. I would say the only real bargain left in Daytonas, if you wanna look on the aftermarket, is 5-digit and 6-digit two-tones. Okay, Zinc saying, I'd eat bison. When I went to school, we had a fantastic grill. It was only open for a few hours a day, but it was a special grill that did like health food and stuff. They knew how to cook bison. And I actually heard from Ted Turner a long time ago that the way to cook it is to treat it like fish and not fry it to death like you do with beef. It doesn't have a lot of fat, and if you cook it too much, it becomes dry. Thanks, Ted. All right, jumping in, Eric S. I think the Explorer 2 is the way to go for GMT. We got L. Wolf joining in. Chronographs versus GMT. Talk of German watches generally evokes elite brands. A Lange und Söhne, Moritz Grossmann, Lang und Heine, and Glashütte Original. But Germany is a big place, and it's a big watch space these days. There have probably never been more watches made in Germany than there are right now. And you've never had more choice when shopping watches from the fatherland. Affordable ones too. So let's start with Nomos, which launched its Club Sport Neomatic World Timer at this year's Watches and Wonders. And my video of that watch became the sleeper hit of all the videos we shot in the fair. I think it got 4 times as many views as the next most popular video, and we did pretty well across the board. And it's easy to see why Nomos dominated. This GMT is an incredible value, and Nomos is an indie brand, independently owned. So the World Timer also opens the door to the ever more popular indie watch non-group brand Sinn. Nomos is a manufacturer too, so this Neomatic includes an in-house caliber which has their own escapement, balance, and hairspring. Even JLC doesn't make all of those parts in-house. Caliber 3202 is automatic. It's big at 31 millimeters across, so it nicely fills the case back. 42-hour reserve, full balance bridge for durability, real fired blued screws. 12 and 24-hour time zones, plus that world time function. You can see the reference ring that moves around the edge of the dial in the periphery of this photo. And then it jumps the hour hand when the reference city changes. City references on the world time ring consist of ICAO, airport designators, and a couple of arbitrary abbreviations where the airport shorthand just didn't make sense. So they did take some liberties here. Product planners at Nomos clearly intended this as a neutral offering, so its 40mm case is profiled in a manner that crops the lugs and wears small for its size. Large and small wrists, male and female, are viable. Lume for the primary time zone is superb. They did a good job with this, and 100-meter water resistance means this is a real sports watch. Okay, Soma R's in the box. We got Simon Holt wearing his Hanhart Desert Pilot, and we got VM saying, I love Nomos so much. We got Ruggiero, Grand Seiko SBGM 221 plus Hanhart 417 ES flyback. Perfect GMT plus Chrono for 10 grand. All right, well, let's continue our tour of the fatherland's affordable options. How about the Damasko DC82? Not only is it the color of my dog, hey Squash, but it offers a huge array of features for $3,064. At 42 millimeters, the Damasko is a central register chrono in the spirit of the old Sinn EZM1. And the options include DLC or no DLC, 3 alternative bezels that allow you to choose between 12 hours, 0 to 60 minutes counting up, and 60 to 0 counting down. And then you can actually opt for either single-sided internal or double-sided internal and external anti-reflective coatings on the crystals. I can't remember any other time a brand offered different AR applications as options on a watch, much less on one that costs $3,000. Also of note, Damasko recommends the 12-hour bezel as a second time zone calculator in addition to its potential as a timing agent for hours. The bezels here use Damasko's ice hardening, which makes them about, I would say, 600 to 700 Vickers, and then DLC at 1800 Vickers or above on top of that. The bezels are also laser etched, so the indications can't simply flake or rub or be scratched off. Dial colors are also available. You can get orange, you can get green, or you can get just white. And illumination will blind any pilots who forget to use the flight deck settings on their NVGs. At 42 millimeters, again, it's not tiny, but this is the sweat-soaked definition of a tool watch. I'm going to say that legibility benefits from the size, and that's by design. You buy this one because it is big and visible. The text on the case back is voluminous and mostly German, but the takeaways are clear. 100 meter water resistance and 100,000 ampere per meter, because it says 1/10 of a Tesla, and that's what that would be. So that is a highly anti-magnetic watch to over Milgauss. The Damasko DC51 movement inside, it's automatic. It's basically a modified 7750 architecture that's designed to work with a central register 60-minute hand like the old Lemania 5100, and it does that quite well. Look carefully, you'll see there's even a date on this dial, but not an obtrusive one that's gonna grate on I hate the date purists. This one is useful, and you're not gonna see it unless you look for it. It's got a 50-hour power reserve, it's got top grade adjustment, which is one notch under chronometer, and it's a credible movement for a very tough watch. I like them in combination. It's appealing because you get a durable, versatile, and intriguingly feature-rich German sports watch for like generic Baume & Mercier money, or less. I really wrestled with the next watch because 7300 feels too high for a show about buying your first watch. Yeah, I know some people start with FP Journe and Grubel 4C, but that's not the point. However, I know that literally thousands of people per year, maybe tens of thousands of people per year, start their watch collecting journeys with the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, so I'm gonna include it here on that basis. The Moonwatch appeals to most for its combination of a reasonable price, enduring design, cool history, and luxury caliber build quality. You can't own a Saturn V rocket, a space shuttle. You can't buy yourself a trip to the ISS, or you probably can't. You can't own Elon Musk's Starbase Texas company town, where they launch the rockets and sometimes blow them up. But what you can do is own the exact same watch used on all of these space platforms and presumably on the Starship when it stops blowing up. All of this and daily practicality are at the heart of the Speedy's appeal. It has authenticity and continuity in its favor. Re-engineered in 2020, the Omega Speedmaster lost none of its classical style, but it gained more in capability than any other redesign since the 1960s. The latest caliber 3861 brings features never seen in combination on a moonwatch, including hacking seconds, a master chronometer certification, resistance, magnetic resistance, bordering on amagnetism, a free-sprung balance, a coaxial escapement, and all of this remains distantly Lemania-based to preserve that essential bloodline. Externally, the Omega Speedmaster Pro remains the same watch with only detailed changes to the dial and bezel, and a revised bracelet with a sliding micro-adjustment inside a very robust thick-gauge clasp, so it feels like money. Sure, you can get the sapphire sandwich in a display case back with scratch resistance and the ability to see your movement for $8,400, but that's where I recommend you consider pre-owned options if you're new to the hobby, and worry, you might not be thrilled with the watch because new watch buyers do make mistakes. Pre-owned examples of the latest reference sapphire sandwich are easy to find online with lots of warranty remaining. Even at thousands off too, you could still expect to get a boxed set with all the paperwork, and it is a fun and entertaining boxed set. Keep in mind, you can always look to pre-owned watches if you want a discount versus retail on almost any used watch. Despite what you see on social media, most used watches, like most used cars, lose a lot of value when they move outside of the dealer. That's not a knock on their quality, it's just a commentary on the way markets work. So I always advise buying pre-owned. If a watch might be at the threshold of pain for you price-wise, get that pre-owned discount, buy one that's still in the warranty, and then decide whether you like it. I'm also going to say, It's tough to compare the Omega Speedmaster Professional to anything. In an era when the Daytona now starts at $16,000, any rivalry between the two is purely symbolic rather than literal, and the no-date manual wind nature of the Moonwatch is an odd duck compared to almost any other mainstream offerings today. That's just not a common combination on a sub-$10,000 chronograph. To be honest, that's also part of its appeal. Jumping into the box, Local Hero Ed. So Local Hero Ed is saying, I'm going to go wild and say beginners should save 5,000 pounds, get a moon swatch, and research before spending that 5,000 pounds. Why not, Adrian? Thoughts on chronograph with only a central chrono second and no counter, like the multi-scale 5975R that was for tech. Don't forget that the Walter Longa tribute watch also had something very similar to that. It's cool, but it's also a limited use case unless you just really love the idea of a flyback permanently running seconds. I think another example of that, although I do think it has a minutes register, was the Zenith Retrograph, which was so unbelievably cool, I recommend you buy it on site. That did have a minute register, but it was similar. Scott saying, the Moonwatch has always been a must. Watching the moon landing in 1969 was one of my greatest memories. That's a cool memory. So one of the only reasons to wish you were alive in the 60s. All right, viewer wish shots number 3. Mark S. shares the watch Vacheron Constantin should have made. First generation DLC black military dial overseas auto. Have I seen this on Watch Pro site? Dan A. highlights one of my favorite watches of all time, the MIH watch, which is both a chronograph and an annual calendar, believe it or not. Omar K. heads through JFK with his Rolex en route to the Boston 10K. I hope it went well, Omar. Nathan B. and Jack the Dog appreciate the Omega Speedmaster Professional white dial. Matt R. and his Tudor Black Bay 925 in sterling silver are somewhere on a beach with a gorgeous strap addition, and I think that is an off-white strap, which matches the taupe beautifully. Let's see, where are we? We're at 262 viewers. Let's try to get that to 300. I know it's tough after missing an episode, but let's see if we can get to 300 viewers and do something special with this episode. Garrett's staying here after 5 p.m. Make it worth his while. Okay, chronographs versus GMTs. So far, we've discussed chronographs and GMTs, taken a detour through Germany, and also taken a bit of a cheap shot at Baume & Mercier. When I look, I'm sorry, Baume, I love your Rivieras. I think they're great watches and beautifully priced, but Baume & Mercier is not in tonight's show. We'll come back to them later. When I look at how expensive Omegas have become, I realize that Longines is now in the market segment occupied by Omega 20 years ago when I was at the beginning of my journey collecting watches. The Spirit Zulu 39mm is close to the perfect $3,300 watch. Several colors are offered, bracelets and straps, so you have options here. Not only do you get a second time zone and a third time zone calculator bezel, but these watches have a quality uncommon among most entry-level watches. They still, and that quality is that they still look expensive at close range. There's no crudeness, and the details hold up. You get a lot for your money, including a COSC Swiss chronometer certification, that second time zone, 100-meter water resistance, a ceramic bezel insert, the calculator bezel that shows you the third time zone, a 3-day power reserve, a silicone hairspring, and a quick-release bracelet system. Extra goodies include a 46.8mm lug-to-lug measurement for small wrist fit and the ability to use standard aftermarket straps because the QR system is built into the bracelet, not the case. So the quick release is in the end link of the bracelet and you can put any standard-sized aftermarket strap in there. You're not locked into some proprietary thing like you would be on a Cartier Santos or Roadster. The clasp design and fabrication are respectably solid, and they're up there with Oris as excellent for the price and objectively very good. This watch looks great and passes for a more expensive timepiece. A 42mm version is offered if you must have a bigger one, and then a 5-year warranty provides Omega levels of protection. I like this a lot. Longines, along with Omega, is one of the 2 engines that keeps the Swatch Group owners happy. And if you've looked at the Hayek family's peripheral interests, which include just about everything other than watches, such as Arabian horses, You will find that all of that is paid for by watches like this. And rightly so, because the Hayeks have delivered us excellent value in that Longines Zulu time. Okay, Ball is a brand I mention here from time to time. A bit like a Swiss-based but American-inspired version of Sinn or Damasko, Ball does a great job of navigating the constraints of low retail prices and mostly customer movements while still offering watches with interesting features and upscale appeal. Now this is where I'm going to be critical and sharply. The Ball GMT-Master II Normandy that you're looking at right there starts off on a shaky premise. I'm not sure piggybacking your marketing on the invasion of Normandy is in good taste. And to be clear, no, it's not. Ball should have rethought this theme and just released the watches without the awkward premise. When there are standalone war cemeteries dedicated to your watch theme, it's time to pick a different theme. So that's my commentary on the idea of Normandy branding this thing. But the watch in isolation is a beautiful and original design by Ball. Sky blue metallic with red and white is unexpected but effective as a color palette for a watch dial. The black dial with lemon lime accents looks fantastic. That's also in this model lineup. You get a lot here with the chronograph, the chronometer certification, Ball's amortizer that yields 5000 G transient shock resistance, actual modern day tritium loom, which is quite impressive, 800 pieces limited edition, and then there's that circular slide rule that makes it a bit like a Navitimer. A few versions were released and they all look great. A lot of times on chronographs, because the running seconds isn't as important, it will be minimized on a dial, whereas here they've realized that the chronograph hours are probably the least important reference, which is why that one has been minimized and sits down at 6 o'clock. An unusual but effective theme that makes this look a little bit more like a vintage twin register style chronograph. $4,199 is a good price, but I can't recommend this in good conscience unless Ball suddenly comes to its senses and commits to doing the right thing with the money, or at least with the profits from these sales. Until that happens, great watch, but pass. Okay, now let's talk about a Ball-themed, well, Ball and military co-themed watch that doesn't require any cognitive dissonance. So this one is US Navy inspired by the modern day US Navy divers. Cross-genre watches like this are an interesting proposition, so I think it's important to note that a chronograph can also be a dive watch. Those are two very popular tropes for people buying their first watch. The tank-like Engineer Hydrocarbon Nedu is as close as you'll come to being able to buy a Rolex Sea Dweller chronograph, if such thing existed, at a price point of $5,049. My experience with this watch, and I've actually had it on my wrist, is that it feels absolutely indestructible and it wears larger than its rated size. Now there are guys who want bigger watches. I meet them all the time and they reach out constantly. So for you guys, this is your entry-level complicated diving US Navy themed watch. It is all of those things for $5,000. I would also say that although this is grade 5 titanium, it still weighs almost a whole pound in imperial metrics. So this is going to be a meaty piece, but also hypoallergenic, and being grade 5, it's going to be quite tough against scratches. It is over 17 millimeters thick, so again, this is one for big wrists. In theory, it's a 42. In reality, it wears more like a 45. The Nedu is a unique watch in that the helium escape valve for saturation diving is built into the crown itself, and this is how it's constructed. It's actually pretty cool. I can't think of any other watch that has this feature. It's a clean implementation that contrasts with the wart-like Omega solution. Let's see what's going on in the chat box right now. We're still not at 300, guys. Stay with me. Keep me streaming, even if you want to go put the kids to bed, help with homework, get a snack. Ben 10 is in the box saying that is one chunky Ball watch. We just jumped to 293 concurrent viewers. We're almost there. And then we've got Miroslav saying to Jeff S., I think there was a show about shock resistance and Ball stole the show. By the way, the shock protection technology in this Nedu diving chronograph is 7500 G transient impact, which means it's even more shock resistant than the Omega Moonwatch, and that one has to deal with the concussion of space launches. We have Johnny in the box saying, diver chronographs give me the ick, pick a genre. Marcos is saying, I think most chronographs have good designs, but it's the dimensions that hurt the watch itself most times. James C saying, I'm in the itty bitty wrist club. That's okay, you and me both. Sashi is saying, the ball reminds me of a Citizen Pro Master. I'd rather have the Pro Master. If I could wear them both, I'd probably prefer the ball. They tend to be very, very solid. We got a comment, my first chrono was a Swatch in the 90s and I still have it. Now the Daytona route. We got Dr. Kevin Moore, my Tag Heuer Carrera chronograph, Heuer 02 GMT is badass. That is also a great and badass suggestion. Why choose, right? And then James T saying, Ball, great watch for the money, and I have to agree. Chris Ray saying, Ball's a strong brand with durable, accurate watches. I love them. And we got Randy S saying, no short of giant chrono dive watch. No shortage, I think, of giant chrono dive watches. Okay, so jumping back to this watch, the ball features good detail up close, and it actually looks this good in person. I've held it. It's not just the photo telling the story, and obviously that's a staged photo, but the watch is as appealing as it looks here. It does not lie. The movement is a 7750 basis, but that just means it's going to be easy to service anywhere in the world when the time comes. Features include the gas valve, the COSC chronometer certification, the chronograph, the date 8, the dive bezel with ceramic insert, the tritium dial, and Ball's odd but impressively precise locking crown. I had such skeptical feelings about this until I operated one, and it feels as solid as you could hope in your wildest dreams. It's a very cool way of protecting a crown against perpendicular impact without a structure the size of a Panerai. Also, keep in mind that 7500 G shock resistance, the bracelet that comes with this thing is monstrous. And it wears like the anchor chain of HMS Victory, but that's all to its credit. It comes packed with features like the double deploy in action, trigger release, screw-fixed removable links, and multiple tool-free extensions so you can adjust it subtly or wear it over a dive suit. And finally, why choose between a chronograph and a GMT? Just as you can have a diver and a chronograph, you can have a chrono and a dual-time watch. Sinn gives you both. Out of Frankfurt, Germany, the new Type 103 ST Diapol is stacked. Now, there's also a titanium version of this for more, but I think steel is real when it comes to sports watches. GMT and chronograph from Frankfurt, Germany. You can see it's got both of those right now. 41 millimeters in steel, full bracelet, and Sinn now does display case backs for added value, and it's a good-looking movement. This one comes with a column wheel, and all of these features, you can now pause and take a look for reference, but I'll highlight the best ones. Sinn's proprietary unlubricated diamond-coated Diapol escapement is insane. It's not something you can get on a watch that costs $50,000, and this one's under $5,000. 200 meters is big boy and big girl water resistance. Bracelet packs a micro extension, which is helpful and premium. The Mission Timer bezel features captive construction, so the bracelet is fixed to the case with screws, which means it's not a snap-on, snap-off. There's great glow on the dial. You'd expect no less on a Sinn tool watch. It dehumidifies its own interior. It is first nitrogen-filled at the factory to move any dust and humidity out of the watch, and then a replaceable copper sulfate capsule screws into the side of the watch to pull any subsequent moisture intrusion out of its interior, and that capsule can be replaced during service. Temperatures that even the owner cannot survive. It's lubricated with special lubricants that can handle -45 Celsius and over 80 degrees Celsius, all of which is to say you'll be dead, but your watch will be fine. And $4,610 for all of that plus a 5-year warranty because of the Diapol escapement. For under $5,000, getting all of that and 5 years warranty, just buy it new. That's my recommendation. One hell of a machine, and a watch that comes from a brand that has been around and will be around. Like Ball, Sinn has a lot of proprietary technologies, so even when you're not getting a manufacturer movement, you're getting a very high quality customer caliber, but you're getting a lot of other technologies and features that add value and justify the price. Okay, viewer wrist shots number 4. Mark L. of Troy, New York rolls with the exquisite Grand Seiko SBGX 91 anti-magnetic, and the Porsche 9, well actually this is a 718, not a 918. He'd love to have a 918 and so would I, but it's a 718 GT4, which would be the driver's choice over the collector car 918. And look at the gloves, how well staged is that? That's the photo of the night. Seth K shares the spiritual successor to the MIH, the Mechanic 2 on his wrist. We have Sergey J, who stuns with his 5-digit Explorer 2 Polar and his Porsche 718 RS. We got Matt F, who shares his delightful Seiko Presage Enamel SNR 37 while balanced and riding on his bike. That's watches and wheels, my man. Philip A takes us home with a his and hers featuring the Fears Brunswick and Omega Aquaterra. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com to see your passion in this fashion. To one and all who made this a very special episode, Mark S., Norm M., Steve Bayless, Darius, welcome to all you guys. Goodbye to all you guys, because we're done. This is our close. Thanks to Garrett for a great night and all of you for making the best job in the world possible. And until next time, time out, Tim out.